Our next storyteller is a producer and writer of film, television, comic books and theatre, who's currently producing the musical Jagged Little Pill, inspired by Alanis Morissette's hit album. Please welcome Arvind Ethan David.
I'm sure you all have the first story that was important to you in your life, the first show or the first book that you read that changed something for you. For me, I was about 11 years old, and I was reading a book in my grandmother's house, a wholly remarkable book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I didn't know who Douglas Adams was, but in opening this book, he was talking to me directly. He was talking into my brain, and he was making a lonely and slightly malfunctional 11-year-old feel cool and smart, and most crucially, less lonely. So I remember that book. A few years later, I'd been sent to boarding school in England. I grew up, by the way, in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, so I'd been sent really far away from home to this very big, very posh, very grand English boarding school. And if I thought I was lonely at 11, being the one brown boy in this boarding school at 13, that was something else. And so I didn't spend a lot of time with other people for the first few years. I spent a lot of it in libraries. The school had good libraries. And in one of those libraries one day, I make an astonishing discovery. Douglas Adams had written another book, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. And I grabbed the book and I start reading it at once, and again, the voice is in my head, and I'm feeling good, and I take the book and I run. I run to the office of the teacher who was in charge of the school play. And I run in, holding this book up, and I go, this is going to be the school play. And he looks at me, and he looks at the 250-page science fiction, time travel, multi-universe novel that I'm holding in my hand. And he says, Arvind, that's all very well, but you know, it's not actually a play. And I go, doesn't matter, we're doing it. And for some reason that was never clear to me, he said yes. And so I go and find my best/only friend, James, the only person more of a misfit in the school than I was. And I say, James, we're doing this. And miraculously, we do. We adapt the book, I direct it, I play Dirk Gently, obviously. And less obviously, it's successful. People liked it. They found it really funny, which meant by some process of osmosis, they found us really funny, which meant by some process of strange further osmosis, we were not alone. The book had changed my life for the first time. Jump forward a couple of years, and with the confidence from this experience, I've escaped high school, and I have gone to geek paradise. I have gone to nerd nirvana, or as they call it, Oxford University. And here things are different, because here everyone was the lonely, bullied teenager. And so to each other, we are enormously cool. And I'm having the time of my life. I have got friends, I'm putting on plays, I've even kissed a couple of girls. Things are magnificent. And so when someone comes to me and says, hey, you can have the second best theater in Oxford to put on a show this term, what would you like to do? Oh, and you can have a budget of, I think it was £5,000. In today's money, still £5,000. And I think immediately, I know what I'm going to do, Dirk Gently, the remake. I was already so Hollywood, the reboot. Bigger and better than before. But this time we figure we better ask for permission, because, you know, rights. And so we get some stationery, and we actually, yes, type a letter to Douglas Adams' agent, the famous, magnificent man called Ed Victor. And I remember so clearly his reply. Dear Arvind, Douglas Adams does not believe that his novel is in any way adaptable to any medium. However, he will not stop you from trying. That is generosity. So we put the show on with our huge budget, and unexpectedly, Ed Victor comes to see it, because he's a really good agent. And I remember him turning up This is like a super agent. This is the man who invented the 3-martini lunch and the multi-book auction. And he turns up for a student production of one of his clients' shows. This is magnificent agenting. In a beautiful Savile Row bespoke suit with his flowing white locks and his beardy beard, the most intimidating, impressive man I have ever met. And after the show, he says something even more intimidating and impressive. He says, Douglas needs to see this. He'll be here later in the week. And on Thursday night in 1995, Douglas Adams turns up to see my adaptation of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. There's a piece of advice people throw about. They tell you, never meet your heroes. Something about being disappointed, something about the words are better on the page. I'm just going to tell you now that is the worst advice in the history of the universe. I am here on this stage, I live in Hollywood, I have my life because I go and meet my heroes. And that night, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency changed my life for the second time because this is what Douglas said. He said it was quite good. It's not bad. He made me think of some things. Come hang out when you're in London. I have a production company. Maybe you can do some work for us. And that was the start of my career. Because suddenly I had this option that Douglas put in front of me, this path. Work was no longer what I had in my head, because I grew up in a very professional, very high-achieving family. Work was a difficult thing. Work was suits and stress and long hours. And Douglas said, no, work is hanging out in a room with a bunch of cool people and talking shit. And making up stuff and finding people to pay you for it. And I thought, no, that's what I want to do. And so a couple of years later, after 2 years of hanging out with Douglas and his gang, I start my own production company. Now this was 1999, start of 2000, so it was the first dot-com boom, which meant that a 23-year-old with no experience and no sense whatsoever could raise millions of dollars, which is what I did. One of Douglas's friends helped me, which was another thing I owe him. So we started this company that we called Ha Ha Bonk, because we were essentially teenagers, and that was a funny name. And for 2 years, I got to pretend to be king of the universe, and we all sat in a room, I hired all my friends, and we thought up cool shit. Then it was 2001, and two things happened. The first thing that happened was that it turned out talking about cool shit with your friends in a very expensive office with bespoke furniture and a big internet pipe didn't actually translate into making money. So the company went bankrupt. I was 25 years old and I had failed in a catastrophically public way. The second thing that happened about a month later was Douglas Adams, who had moved to Hollywood at the age of 49, working in the Hitchhiker's movie, died of a heart attack while trying to break writer's block by working out in his gym. It turned out that the only good thing about the big internet pipe into my bespoke furniture office is that I could sit in it alone as the removal men repossessed my furniture, crying while I watched Douglas's funeral that was being webcast on the internet. That was 2001. Some other bad things happened that year too. It took me some time to recover for that. I really fell apart, and but life happens, and we're going to jump forward 10 years. In those 10 years, I had fixed myself. I'd gone to grad school, I'd gone to therapy, I'd done the things you're supposed to do. Most significantly, perhaps, I had met and fallen in love and persuaded a wonderful woman to marry me, and she's somewhere here tonight. And one of the things that I said to that wonderful woman, I said, let's move to America. Because I'd worked in the UK, I had amassed a career, I was not massively successful, but I had made half a dozen features. I was making a living from making stuff up. And I said, let's go try America, because that looks like fun. So we turned up in Hollywood, and then that thing happened that everyone in this room, I hope it hasn't happened to you, but I suspect it has, because it happens to us all. It's the thing we fear the most. I'd hit a dry patch. The inspiration was running out. And that's not a great place to, and when the inspiration runs out in our job, money runs out too. And not a great way to start a new life with a new wife in a new country. We were at a wedding. And things were bad. But sitting next to us at the wedding was this beautiful man in a bespoke Savile Row suit with flowing hair and a beardy beard. And I thought, he's not going to remember me. And I tap him on the shoulder to reintroduce myself, and he says, Arvind David, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. The rights have just come back to the estate. Douglas always liked you. Why don't you have a go? And today, gloriously, we're in the second season of Dirk Gently on BBC America and Netflix. I get to make my dream show with some of my best friends. And every day we get to do this thing to 192 countries around the world. We get to tell the lonely misfits that they are not alone. Thank you.